The scorching Egyptian sun beat down on Muhammad Ali's weathered face as he guided his camel through the rugged terrain near Nag Hammadi. It was December 1945, and the world was still reeling from the aftermath of World War II. Little did Muhammad know that he was about to unearth a discovery that would shake the foundations of Christian history. As he dug near the base of a cliff, searching for nitrate-rich soil to fertilize his crops, his shovel struck something hard. Curious, he brushed away the sand to reveal a large earthenware jar. With trembling hands, he lifted the seal and peered inside. "Bismillah," he whispered, his eyes widening at the sight of leather-bound codices nestled within. These weren't just any books. They were the lost Gospels, hidden away for nearly 2 millennia. Among them lay the Gospel of Thomas, the secret book of John, and the enigmatic first apocalypse of James. Meanwhile, across the ocean in Oxford, England, a young scholar named Sarah Jenkins was poring over a newly acquired Greek manuscript. Her fingers traced the faded ink, deciphering words that hadn't been read in centuries. "Professor Adams," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement. "You need to see this." The manuscript contained a dialogue between Jesus and his brother James, revealing teachings that had been lost to time. As Sarah read aloud, the words seemed to come alive. "Fear not, James, for I shall guide you beyond the gates of death itself. The kingdom you seek lies not in the heavens above, but in the depths of your own being." Professor Adams leaned in, his brow furrowed. This changes everything we thought we knew about early Christianity. Little did they know, these discoveries were just the beginning. A veil was being lifted, revealing a Jesus far more mysterious and profound than the world had ever imagined. The forgotten scrolls were about to rewrite history, challenging believers and skeptics alike to question everything they thought they knew about the origins of their faith. Sarah Jenkins couldn't sleep. The words from the ancient manuscript echoed in her mind, painting a picture of Jesus so different from what she'd been taught in Sunday school. As dawn broke over Oxford spires, she found herself in the Bodleian Library, surrounded by stacks of theological texts. "It doesn't make sense," she muttered, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Why would these teachings be hidden away?" Her mentor, Professor Adams, appeared behind her, his eyes twinkling with a mix of excitement and caution. My dear, you've stumbled upon the great controversy of early Christianity." He pulled up a chair, his voice lowering as if sharing a secret. "Imagine, if you will, the chaos of the 4th century. The Roman Empire is crumbling, and the Church is desperately trying to establish order." Sarah leaned in, captivated. "Enter Bishop Athanasius," Adams continued, "a man determined to create a unified Christian doctrine. But unity often comes at a price." He pulled out a worn copy of the Nag Hammadi texts. These writings? They challenged everything Athanasius stood for. Direct divine access for all believers? Salvation through self-knowledge? It was too radical, too dangerous for a church trying to consolidate power. Sarah's brow furrowed. "But surely truth is more important than control." Adams smiled sadly. "In an ideal world, perhaps. But imagine the scandal when the Carpocratians, a group of so-called libertine Gnostics, started using these texts to justify, well, let's just say questionable practices." He pointed to a passage in the secret Gospel of Mark, describing a young man in a linen cloth approaching Jesus by night. Clement of Alexandria accused them of twisting this symbolism of spiritual purity into something far more carnal. Sarah's eyes widened. "So they threw out the baby with the bathwater." "Precisely," Adams nodded. "It was easier to suppress it all than to risk misinterpretation. The church fathers believed they were protecting the flock." As they spoke, neither noticed the figure lurking in the shadows of the library stacks. Father Thomas, a visiting Vatican scholar, clutched his rosary tightly, his face a mask of concern. These forgotten texts were resurfacing, and with them, questions that could shake the very foundations of modern Christianity. "This cannot be allowed to spread," he whispered to himself, slipping away to make an urgent phone call to Rome. The battle for the soul of Christianity, it seemed, was far from over. The sun was setting over the Oxford skyline as Sarah and Professor Adams made their way to his cluttered office. The air was thick with the scent of old books and the weight of centuries-old secrets. "So, what exactly did these heretical texts teach?" Sarah asked, her curiosity burning brighter than ever. Adams smiled, his eyes twinkling with the excitement of a man about to share his life's passion. He reached for an old, leather-bound journal on his desk. My dear, they spoke of 3 pillars of wisdom that would make even the most devout modern Christian question everything they thought they knew. He opened the journal, revealing intricate diagrams and notes. First, the concept of the inner kingdom. Jesus wasn't just talking about heaven as a far-off place, but as a state of being within each of us. Sarah leaned in fascinated. You mean like when Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you"? Exactly, Adams exclaimed. But it goes deeper. The Gospel of Thomas suggests that this inner light is our direct connection to the divine. Imagine no need for priests or churches as intermediaries. Just you and the cosmic Christ consciousness. He flipped to another page, covered in symbols. The second pillar, sacred symbolism. These texts reveal that Jesus' parables weren't just moral lessons, but cosmic keys to understanding reality itself. Sarah's brow furrowed. How so? Adams pointed to a drawing of a seed. Take the parable of the sower. On the surface, it's about spreading the word of God. But these texts suggest it's really about how divine truths take root in the fertile soil of an awakened heart. He paused, his voice lowering. And the third pillar, well, it's the most controversial of all. Just then, a knock at the door made them both jump. Father Thomas stood in the doorway, his face a mask of concern. I couldn't help but overhear, he said, stepping into the room. Professor, you know the dangers of spreading these ideas. Adams stood, his posture defiant. The danger, Father, is in suppressing the truth. These texts speak of death not as an end, but as a liberation of the soul from the material world. Sarah's eyes widened. Like reincarnation? Not quite, Adams replied. The Apocalypse of James describes a soul's journey past gatekeepers of the material realm, reuniting with the divine light. It's more akin to spiritual evolution. Father Thomas shook his head. This is blasphemy. It contradicts everything the church teaches. Or, Sarah interjected, her voice trembling with excitement, it expands everything we thought we knew. What if these aren't contradictions, but missing pieces of a greater truth? The tension in the room was palpable. 3 perspectives, 3 worldviews, colliding in a moment that felt like it could change everything. And somewhere in the depths of their souls, each of them felt a stirring, the first tremors of an awakening that had been waiting 2,000 years to happen. The debate in Professor Adams' office had stretched long into the night. As dawn broke over Oxford, Sarah found herself wandering the misty streets, her mind reeling with the implications of what she'd learned. She paused at a small coffee shop, the aroma of freshly brewed espresso drawing her in. As she waited for her order, she overheard a heated discussion at a nearby table. I'm telling you, quantum physics is proving what mystics have been saying for centuries, a young man with dreadlocks exclaimed, gesturing excitedly. Consciousness shapes reality. Sarah's ears perked up. She couldn't help but think of the Gospel of Philip and its teachings on perception and creation. Excuse me, she interjected, approaching their table. I couldn't help but overhear. I'm actually researching some ancient texts that seem to echo what you're saying. The group welcomed her warmly, and soon Sarah found herself deep in conversation about the parallels between modern science and ancient wisdom. It's not just science, a woman with vibrant purple hair chimed in. Look at the rise of women in spiritual leadership. It's like we're reclaiming something that was lost. Sarah nodded eagerly. Actually, there's a text called the Gospel of Mary that portrays Mary Magdalene as a spiritual teacher, privy to secret teachings from Jesus himself. The group fell silent, absorbing this information. You know, an older gentleman spoke up, his eyes twinkling. My community has been experimenting with shared resources and collective decision-making. It feels revolutionary, but you're telling me the early Christians were doing this 2,000 years ago. Sarah smiled, thinking of the descriptions in Acts of the Apostles, sharing all things in common. It seems like what's old is new again. As the conversation flowed, Sarah felt a growing sense of excitement. These weren't just dusty old texts, they were living ideas, finding new expression in the modern world. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from Professor Adams, urgent. Meet me at the library. Bring your new friends if you trust them. Sarah looked up at the group, a mix of anticipation and trepidation on her face. I know this might sound crazy, but how would you all like to be part of uncovering a 2,000-year-old mystery? The energy in the cafe shifted, a sense of destiny hanging in the air. One by one, they nodded, ready to embark on a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about spirituality, history, and their own potential. As they left the cafe, None of them noticed Father Thomas watching from across the street, his face a mask of concern as he dialed a number on his phone. "It's spreading," he said grimly. "We need to act now." The stage was set for a collision between the guardians of orthodoxy and the seekers of hidden wisdom. And at the center of it all, a young scholar named Sarah, about to discover that the greatest mysteries often lie within. The Bodleian Library was eerily quiet as Sarah and her newfound companions hurried through its hallowed halls. Professor Adams was waiting for them in a secluded reading room, surrounded by ancient texts and modern laptops. "I'm glad you're all here," he said, his voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. "What we're about to show you could change, well, everything." He gestured to a weathered manuscript on the table. "This is a newly discovered fragment of the Gospel of Mary. It speaks of a ritual, a way to awaken the divine spark within." Sarah leaned in, her heart racing. "How does it work?" Adam smiled. "It's beautifully simple, yet profound. It begins with lighting a candle, a symbol of the inner light we all carry." As he spoke, he lit a small candle on the table. The flame flickered, casting dancing shadows on the ancient walls. "Next, we're instructed to close our eyes and ask ourselves, what gatekeepers, fear, doubt, anger, hold my soul captive?" The group fell silent, each person lost in introspection. Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her chest as she confronted her own inner obstacles. Suddenly, the door burst open. Father Thomas stood there, flanked by two stern-looking men in suits. "I'm sorry, Professor," he said, his voice heavy with regret, "but I can't allow this to continue. These teachings were hidden for a reason." The room erupted into chaos. Sarah's new friends formed a protective circle around the manuscript, while Professor Adams stood defiantly before Father Thomas. "You can't suppress the truth forever," Adams declared. "These aren't threats to faith, they're keys to a deeper understanding." As tensions rose, Sarah felt a strange calm wash over her. She stepped forward, placing herself between the two factions. "Wait," she said, her voice quiet but firm. What if we're all missing the point?" All eyes turned to her. "These texts, they don't contradict the Bible, they expand it. Like finding hidden rooms in a beloved house." She looked at Father Thomas. "Isn't faith strong enough to embrace mystery? To grow and evolve?" She turned to her friends. "And isn't the point of this wisdom to bring light, not create more division?" A heavy silence fell over the room. Father Thomas's stern expression softened slightly. "Perhaps." He began hesitantly, "Perhaps there is room for dialogue." As the tension slowly dissipated, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. The journey to reclaim these lost teachings wouldn't be easy, but it held the promise of a faith that could breathe, grow, and embrace the fullness of human experience. She picked up the candle, its flame still burning bright. "Truth isn't something to be feared when it's whispered in love," she said softly. "What if these lost teachings aren't threats but invitations? Invitations to a deeper, more vibrant faith?" As the candlelight flickered in her eyes, Sarah knew that the real adventure, the inner journey of awakening, was only just beginning. And somehow, she knew that the Jesus of these hidden Gospels was smiling, watching as a new generation rediscovered the timeless wisdom he had shared so long ago. The ancient and the modern, the mystical and the practical, all converging in this moment of possibility. The lost path was being reclaimed, one awakened heart at a time.